Hi, everybody. Hope everybody's doing well. And I'm very glad that a few of you have sent in some questions. And there have been a few that I've been, let's say, they seem to be uh, a little later. I was checking my list. Sometimes I get them mixed up with other things. So sorry about that. So I'd like to get started. And I hope everyone's doing well. A couple of things maybe I should say. Bob Haig's mother passed away, uh, and I would ask for some prayers for her. And if you feel comfortable doing that, and John Boyle passed away as well, and I'd also ask that you sent in some good wishes as well. Now, this is kind of a question from Barbara Newport here in Ottawa. And she's talking about her questions arise from a short story, The Shining Houses, the book Dance of the Happy Shades by Alice Munro. That's what she's talking about. And she says the story describes neighbors in a new community agreeing that an elderly neighbor's unkept property is an eyesore and reducing their property values. They are going to take action to change this neighbor's property and the way she lives. The writer does not support their actions and tells them that the woman has been there since before any of them were born. She says of her neighbors, these are people who win and they are good people. They want homes for their children. They help each other when there is trouble. They plan a community and no possibility anywhere of a mistake. And then she says to herself, there is nothing you can do at present but put your hands in your pockets and keep a disaffected heart. And then she goes on and asks some questions about this. I apologize, none of you have read this book, and there's not much that perhaps that you can get out of it except by listening to that particular part. And she says, could you talk about the power we give to our rightness or wrongness and unwillingness to see any other viewpoint? To that, all of you are old enough, I would say, to realize that somehow, somewhere, sometime, you've engaged with being so right you couldn't believe that you were anything but right and found out you weren't necessarily right. For those of you who have not experienced that finding out, I'm sorry about that. One day you may, and I hope it's not too disheartening for you. Most of us on the planet for a while have found that most of the time we don't have enough information about the material that we're looking at, but we assume that we do, or the individuals we're looking at, and we assume that we do. And that assumption is based on patterns that we've considered very viable, and they come out of our background. And we insist on having them more right. Therefore, we become more righteous about it. And we don't entertain the possibility that we may be seeing things from, let's say, an angle that may not be as perfect as we believe it is. I would suggest that everyone has experienced this. I just hope that everyone's noticed that they have. And we will continue to do it that way, very likely, because that tends to be the way people allow themselves to align with themselves so that they can keep valuing themselves so they don't feel vulnerable. So I would say, Barbara, that's one point of view. Also, our willingness to impact other people's lives in support of our own sense of the way it should be. I think this is uh, part of the interaction that we have. We do it that way because we are actually susceptible to our own levels of vulnerability without even knowing that that is how we engage defensively. One could say in a parlance, um, um, about the fear of being wrong somehow or not considered as valuable as others may seem to be. It's a difficult thing. I think maybe it's important to put on a hat that says to yourself, an invisible one, of course, that it is allowed that you may not be as right as you think you are. Certainly in spiritual materials, gosh, they go from one extreme to the other, and all signifying rightness in some way or wrong, or wrongness from the view of another, taking a look at what a person might say. Very fortunately for all of us, we work through ourselves attempting to understand what may be going on within, yes. How we make sense of things, yes. But at the same time, attempting to understand literally beyond our only way that we believe is true. There must be something beyond that, no matter what. As I've often said, that's why it's important to recognize your relationship with you and who you are and what you think you are and how you believe you have to be to keep your sense of balance, or in other words, the patterns that you believe you have to maintain to be comfortable within yourself. Doesn't necessarily mean you're going to make other people comfortable. And that's maybe a question that we can ask ourselves and begin to understand that there is much more than how we see the world, and keep exploring it to try and understand that. Once we allow ourselves to construct a form within ourselves that says everything else is wrong and only we're right, then it's perhaps not leaving room to go beyond where you are. I don't care what your belief is, whether it be mine or somebody else's way of seeing things. You're looking at things to try to expose to yourself you, and with respect and kindness and an attempt to understand others, perhaps, might also be helpful. See where things line up rather than seeing where things don't line up. That's the easy part. See where things do line up, and you will be surprised to find out there is much to learn in recognizing that those areas of relative alignment helps us to understand the world a little bit better. Certainly might help you to understand your neighbor a little bit better. There's no real description of the neighbor in what we're talking about here, but it's very interesting. Once you set up a community mind, then anything that is different than that is just different. That's all. And the circumstances of this particular neighbor we're not a part of, but certainly there seems to be something going on with that elderly person, I'm assuming. elderly neighbor, yes, so that they can't do the things that other people think they should be doing. So the right solution in this is to refrain from action. Does this point to a way for us to deal with rightness in ourselves and others? It certainly may be looked at from many points of view. If you look at religious backgrounds, for example, um, so-called Christian, so-called Buddhist backgrounds, Hindu backgrounds, um, and Taoist backgrounds, and perhaps all backgrounds, generally look at things uh, in a more compassionate view, and then turn the page and don't look at things from a compassionate view. Since we are all human beings, you'll find that you turn pages every day, not very compassionate. When it pleases you, or when it pleases the pattern that you engage with, which is natural, you will be sympathetic, compassionate from a point of view that relates to you and how you feel comforted by how you function in moments relevant to being sympathetic to a cause in this particular instance, or just plainly to others and trying to understand what's going on inside of them. Hope that's okay, Barb. The idea of this concept of disaffected heart could be a similar concept to a kind of a deeper relationship with the heart center. Heart center is very complicated. There's another question coming up at some point related to that heart center. And it's complicated not because of it, it's complicated because of the personalities that it engages with. The heart center, one would like to say, is always sympathetic, compassionate, engaging, and yes, it can be. And yes, it has been and will be. But at some particular point, the declaration of an engagement with the heart center by individuals who have personalities, 8 billion of us plus, doesn't necessarily mean that the heart center is functioning uh, in a dispassionate or passionate way. The matter of response from the personality, response from the personality and its patterns and how it functions and what it believes and how it needs to believe to be valuable within itself is a complicated piece. If that heart center opens in a particular manner, and Barbara suggests that it might be a second level opening, the heart center, if it opens on primary level, it normally opens in conjunction with and in alignment with an emotional engagement. And that's only the very first openings. You become very sympathetic and very sensitive emotionally. But at a different level within that, you see things from a different perspective. The personality sees differently than its pattern, and it shocks the personality because it's seeing different than it normally sees as it relates to uh, engaging with others and engaging with itself. One person that I met one time, oh yeah, it's like a conscience. Well, it may be, except the conscience itself, in a way, is related to rules and regulations of a particular culture. And if they are different than what the personality believes, the personality will cloud it over. You won't even notice it. And that is not an aspect of the heart center, it's an aspect of the survival centers that are quite natural in us as human beings. There's no negation there. It's what we do. At a second level of opening, it's linking up with seeing differently than the personality itself is trained to see. That is a very different way to engage. And it's not that it's disaffected, it's more like it's not seeing the same way. And the writer in this instance, Alice Munro, is trying to propose something kind of in a way similar to an aspect of how Buddhism is expressed in terms of keeping your space and not necessarily jumping to a conclusion about what is happening and what isn't happening within individuals, and what should be then a natural response of what should happen. So that's not it's kind of a disaffected heart because it's pausing and not necessarily following the natural reflex reactions of the community. So, kind of something related to the writer and related to how many people see how some Buddhist responses seem to indicate. It's very, very difficult for all of us with normal personalities to make sense of something that doesn't relate to the personality. But we attempt to do that every day. And that's our so-called refinement as an individual, as a personality, each and every one of us. Don't care who you are. When it gels inside, when an idea gels inside, that shows you the value of you. You've come up with something. You are valued as right according to you. This is not a disaffected heart. This is a heart affected by all the patterns that you have been protecting all your life. This is a natural state until we move into a different state. And that's not, let's say, on the table yet. For most, then you will always need to look at the data, so to speak, emotionally speaking, mentally speaking, physical sensing responses. Come up with a reflex. And often those reflexes are very quick and they're not necessarily as valuable as what we believe they are. We come up with that reflex and we respond because this is the trick. If you respond faster, you're much smarter. But you may be as dumb as a stone. Meaning, you come up with a reflex that fits the pattern that you believe is valuable to allow you to feel good about yourself. It's astonishing that we all do this. But then to recognize afterwards, this may not be helpful to you, because that's you continuing on without data, but very much with reflex. You are protecting the stances that you believe are necessary, and you need to do that until you're understanding something slightly different, and then more different, and then more different. As you know, I always say that's on a continuum. It's not easy for us. So you do what you can, and you learn from you the best you can. Some are not interested in learning, honestly, because they already know. This is not a negative thing. This is just a pattern. Unfortunately, it's not as helpful, but nobody gets this perfect. We're personalities. And the reverse response of this metaphorical story, one could say, is that all are aligning in a community to negate somebody who doesn't cut their grass. Maybe because they're kids. Well, then they should go live someplace else. And in saying that, you all may say, yeah, well, why not? The same is true of ideas. Someone comes up with an idea that is different. Has happened in science for eons of time. Has happened in religious backgrounds. Certainly has happened in politics, that's for sure. It's happened in archaeology. How long did it take for people to open up the site at the old city of Troy? After somebody had said, it's right here. No, can't be there. Oh, that's a small thing. Many other things. The boiling of lily pasta, the boiling of milk. I can't read why I remember that. No, that's terrible. Don't boil your milk. That's going to spoil the milk. But pasteurization came out of that. I mean, these are small things. But if you look around in your own life, you'll find them there. A great idea for 30 seconds, and even you don't agree with it anymore. Things you can't see about yourself, things we can't see about ourselves. They exist. Don't beat up the self. Understand and learn and do what you can. Understand that everybody else is doing the same thing, or you will believe they're not and only you are. Not real. No matter how subtly that occurs, it will occur in an individual, in a place within them that will touch on something else that eventually will help them 10, 15 years later to understand that something of a kind that is similar to somebody else had occurred in them. They beat up on somebody else, but it was very annoying, that other person, because they were acting like them. But they didn't know that. Not their fault. But this happens every day of our lives. We are human beings. Learn best you can and continue. It's like saying, I kind of think I know a little bit about what a human being is named so-and-so. If you're talking about yourself. But being a human being is a lot more than that. We have a tremendous focus on the literal, on the physical, on how we react or respond to something, and an idea that pours through our head that values those things. And we must maintain that evaluation somehow to feel comfortable within ourselves. Search out the little things where you see something that was, you couldn't quite get it, but it was kind of helpful. It might have struck you inside. My goodness, why did I respond that way? When you're reading, when you're engaging with people, realize that you have a tremendous sensitivity and you do your very best to blank it out or turn it so that it's harsher because you're protecting yourself. We all do this to some degree. Find out where you do it. Be curious. Wonder why. Don't have to tell anybody. It's not a popularity contest. It's a relationship that you're having with yourself. That's a good thing. How it occurs, it will give you uncomfortable moments, and it will fill you with a kind of semi-awe. Try to calm the awe down. Try to calm down any responses that don't sound very comfortable. But discomfort is normal in a process of growing, any process of growing, unless your focus is on plain memorization of things that seem to be true to you. That means you're padding your truths to make them the only ones. Is that okay? It's what we all do, have done. Check it out. Learn how to be honest with that. Be honest with you. You be honest with you. Never mind a display. You will have to display. You're trained that way. Pull back from it. Understand deeper the best you can. It'll make you feel uncomfortable. You won't be getting enough attention. From who? Figure it out. And that one is difficult because in our world, we are basically trained to need reassurance from others. And that is something that our whole culture values. And if we don't get it, what did we do? What good are we? And we all are susceptible to this one. I always like the idea of hitting a good golf shot when you're out playing golf, even if it's 9 holes. And it's the only one you hit. Keeps bringing you back. Maybe I'll get 2 next time. It's the same in your daily life. Recognize the good ones the best you can. Stay with it. Remind yourself of them every now and then. The good thoughts. Find a balance. Our responses are not always related to balance. They're related to instantaneously reflex responses based on the patterns that we have. You have them. I have them. Don't hide them from you. Never mind anybody else. Learn from you. You are a fantastic being to learn from. It's not negative out there. It's curious. Wow, why do I do that? So that's okay. All right, now I know. I think that this will become really important in the future. And it's not some big deal because it's fairly clear that there's increased psychological awareness, or at least training going on all over the world, where if indeed it's only for business, which is too bad, but how do we get people to buy our product? How do we get this? How can we learn how to do that? In politics, in religious backgrounds, you're always trying to get someone to listen. And what you want them to listen to is the idea that you believe might be valuable. Our dilemma is that our engagement with this is to elevate the product, the target area. In a relationship with inner growth, what you're trying to do is expose yourself to deeper understandings. The dilemma with that is that exposure to deeper understandings means the change occurs within us. Sometimes we need help with that because we like to maintain a certain level of similarity in our personas, our personalities. And that comforts us. If too much change occurs, it makes us feel uncomfortable. So thus, you have experiential inner growth. So there has to be a place within us where physically, emotionally, mentally, we can find things to comfort us other than putting down other people, for example, being angry or frustrated. And this is very difficult for us because a certain amount of these things kind of makes our personality ship balanced, kind of, in the way we've been trained. But it's vital to begin to realize that that sometimes has to be softened. And it's not so simple because the behavior that we're normally aligned, well, not aligned with, but run into is a more aggressive behavior. This is right. That's right. This is how to do it. That's how to do it. And encouraging us to attempt to begin to understand how energy itself follows those activities is very difficult for us. So that if we are softer inside, energy will come in to soften. If we practice that, then there's a response inside for all the times that we don't agree with something. It becomes kind of semi-left out. So all of a sudden, the reflex that occurs inside can be a reflex that says, You're leaving me out here. What's going on? If it's a pattern that we have been attached to, this kind of attachment is probably the most normal thing that a human being is involved with. I'm not talking about negative aggression here. I'm talking about attachment. We are attached to the way we express ourselves, the way we engage with ourselves, for the purpose of maintaining that attachment. In the old traditions, Hinduism and Buddhism, they always talked about letting go of your attachments. Of course, the first thing that comes up in people's mind is don't have too many friends. Keep your family at bay. Otherwise, when you become spiritual, they will hold you in a position. Even both male and female, some ideas are that don't get married to a guy. He'll interrupt your life. And don't get married to a woman. She'll influence you and not want to let you go and grow. I have another idea. Be careful of yourself. You'll hold you desperately in one place to comfort yourself about the value of how you do things. Because you're married to you. You're attached to you. You're glowing with your own way of functioning. This is normal. So attachment doesn't have a lot to do in the spiritual sense, so-called higher state sense. It hasn't got to do with other people. It has to do with you. You can be engaged with other people, loving, respectful, responsive. And you will find out how difficult that is to maintain. They will push you away, or they will bring you in. They will allow you to engage. They will push you. They don't want to engage with you. You are attached to your own engagement with how you believe you have to be free. And all the while, you're tied, locked into a way of engaging that is better than anything. Yeah, that's how it goes. And it doesn't mean it's negative. It means, my goodness, that's hard to see. It's hard to smile under those conditions, but it is important. I remember a person talked to me one time. I had told him a story about an individual I had met who was tremendously able. And I was fortunate enough to know, because he shared that link with me. God only knows why, but he did. And it was pretty impressive, because he was actually trying to help me in my inner growth. I was grateful for that. Someone says, that may have given you an attachment. I said, good. To a higher state, maybe it will help me. And if it does, the only unfortunate thing will be that I will see more within me and have to learn how to deal with that. And I would rather be able to do that than to be blind to that engagement. There is an interesting concept that's going around, and it's kind of new agey, but interesting concept that ultimately there will be a community of higher level beings who will be very helpful to us on these levels, and we will not like it because we are attached to who and how we are. Maintain that attachment. Did you hear me? I did say that. Maintain that attachment while slowly understanding what it is. Learning how to find a balance in you. Reach for it because you will not want it. You've made your bond, but reach for it. Soften it down. See you, but don't see also the negation that you apply to it and let it soften. And attempt to be respectful and kind to you. It will be good practice when you engage with others. This is not so, it's so easy to talk about, so difficult to do. But the respect that you hold for an unknown you will adjust, will change somewhat. As you begin to know you. And you'll miss not knowing. Because when you don't know, it doesn't mean anything. You think you're right. You reflexively respond in a rightness. It doesn't devalue you. You just don't know. You're something other than that. And more able than your definition of able. That's the attachment. Definition of down, definition of up. You've got to maintain that to see through it. And when you do, you will learn that you will not enjoy it as much. And be bitter. Because it aligns with concepts of loving, of the heart, loving, that is deeper than a kind of roundabout way of just maintaining a form because you think the form is the only right form. This is not easy, but smiling isn't easy either in it. It's worth it. Of course, in talking about this, you have the concept of energy. If you have sincerity in doing this, don't forget, you have sincerity in maintaining the way you've been without your knowledge. All the resentments, all the good stuff will place us in a position of worth. You're already worth so much, way beyond the value that you place on yourself. Why? Because once again, within you, automatically, you emit energy to others, to the whole system of humanity. Yeah, you walk out your front door, if you have one. You engage with other people. You have two engagements, one that's real inside and the other one that's on the surface. You bring them together the best you can, but you have the one on the surface for a particular reason, based on how you think you need to be. Reasonable engagement, one could say. The other one is those stirrings, the winds of time, and how things are really, and they're not. They're sort of a little like that, because we all have these things that are part of us. Old behaviors, old ways of thinking. No devaluation in them. This is the nature of us. But you're learning. And it's not learning on the surface, it's learning in your experience. It's always a little bit more different than reading a book. Read the books. Do the experience. Smile at the books. You're going to see a lot of stuff that you'll agree and a lot of stuff you won't agree with. Doesn't matter. Some of it may be true whether you agree with it or not. Some of it may not be true, even if you do agree with it. But the energy that you engage with as you grow will broaden out the features that lie within you that you'll have difficulty with. Also, some of the joys that you didn't even know you had. So, as you grow internally, more energy can operate through you. Up many, number of frequencies that may be supportive of others growing. The same as that individual I was talking about earlier was able to be help to this guy. Now, you could say it's a presumed help, absolutely. But the energy was there and I could perceive it thanks to him. Our ability to perceive is related to, as close to our personas as we can allow perception to occur. Now look, that means you can perceive as if it's close to your physical form fairly easily. When it's subtle, you may not be able to notice it at all because we're not trained to. It's not been the thing that we were trained to right at the beginning of our lives. So we continue on and try to grow and try to understand what it all means. I've talked a little bit about evolving species, and that's us, the best we can. And not only the evolving part takes shape, but takes shape through the personalities. So I think I talked a little about the question that Mary Louise Mongeon asked, and she's wondering about the evolution of the human species and about the evolution of individuals within that species. And because of the ebb and flow of generally, as you listen to the news at 10 or 11 or 9 o'clock, depending on where you are, and you hear all kinds of things from all over the place, and it doesn't sound like we're evolving very much. Don't lose heart, because although it is easy to, because we have generalized ideas about what things should look like if we're actually evolving. Keep those ideas in the back of your mind. Operate like them the best you can, and continue to grow. And you will be influencing the general core of humanity in a manner that relates to how you are attempting to be helpful. And it will be something that is important, generally speaking, regardless of how you may or may not think that might be valuable. It is. If you can engage and help you little by little, not big shots in the stuff, boy, little by little is really helpful, because it calms down the pride and makes you think and wonder about even how the little things can be of service. Even though you may not see them. Remember, subtlety, wow. We're not geared for it, but we're learning. I think those two will be questions for tonight, and I'll attempt to catch up and next Thursday on two more, and then there are questions for a few questions for the seminar coming up, and we have a few weeks before that. But any questions that you would like to send in, I'd really appreciate it. Sometimes there are 2 or 3 questions that are very, very close. So I apologize if I don't mention names exactly relative to questions, because they lead into each other. I'll try to do better. Have a good meditation, and remember our friends, and Bob Haig's mother in New Jersey, and John Boyle. And it would be okay to ask for help for everybody. Wish you well, everybody. Good night. Have a good sleep, everybody, or the rest of the evening. Good rest of the evening. And we'll just do the bouncing and grounding from here on in. Good night.